23rd, 7 o'clock, Littleton Board of Health meeting. And I'll read the, oh, I lost you guys. Here we are. I'm just going to read the Zoom meetings. The law and rules. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation / Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns related to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. These concerns are supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring but is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of the comments being made by some meeting participants joined by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in the discussion and sharing information during the public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are off. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone so that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use your raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you call in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands. The chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. And after speaking, we request the participants return their microphones back to mute. So because Mike Fontanella has to get off Zoom, we're going to go right to you, Mike. And I think Ian's on, and we're just going to postpone you for just a few minutes so we can get Mike's input on what's going on with the schools and let him get off. So go ahead, Mike. I asked him.
Thank you.
I asked Mike to come on because just was wondering, I don't have any kids in the school, so I was just wondering what their plan for going back after the holidays is going to be. So, and then.
Yeah, at our last school committee meeting, we talked about it and we decided and voted to go full remote for the first week back from winter break. So that's January 4th through January 8th. Is our intention to come back in hybrid mode on January 11th, but we will use that week where we're remote to evaluate how things are going. We have told families and staff that we expect them to report positive COVID cases to the district during that week of remote learning so that we understand how things are going. We felt that we saw a spike in the first, 7 days of learning after we came back from Thanksgiving. So what we're trying to do is see if we have that a similar spike. If we do and it tapers off the way it did over Thanksgiving, then we would expect that we would be able to come back on January 11th. But if we're not confident that tapering has occurred, then we could fully determine that we need to stay remote for a while longer. Given that we have decided to go fully remote, we talked to the teachers union and both parties agreed that we didn't feel it was necessary to go through the attestation that we did the last time. We thought it would be much less meaningful given that we already decided to be remote for 5 days of learning minimum coming back from the holiday break.
Great. I've heard other towns doing that too. Mike, have a question?
Yes. Have you had a chance to look at the data for Littleton and the nearby communities for the, shall we say, post-Thanksgiving? Because there's more than, shall we say, even a week lag. It actually goes on for maybe 2.5 weeks. So
the data that I cited is specific positive cases for our students and staff that we saw after Thanksgiving. we had 15 cases through the first 2 weeks after coming back, but of those 15 cases, something like 10 of them were in the first 6 days of instruction. And then it significantly tapered off. We were still getting them, but we're getting 1 a day, 1 every other day, 2 every 3 days. But in the first 6 days, we had 4 one day, 3 another day, and there were really no breaks. I think maybe 1 day we had 0 in those first 6 days. So that's what I'm referring to. Yes, you're right. The community-wide spread was much more significant, and there was not a respite. As a matter of fact, it continued to accelerate. So that's part of what we'll look at during that week. But we're really, we felt that even though we had that spike, we managed, we were okay in terms of keeping school open. But it was very stressful on the staff to work through that. So what we're hoping to do is avoid stressing the staff. We don't feel that we were in a terrible position from a health and safety perspective. We weren't as good as we were, but it wasn't catastrophic in terms of we never contemplated having to close the district or close the school building during that spike. Or at least we didn't once we saw the spike tapering off. So we're hopeful that we'll see something no worse than that. Hopefully it'll be better. People may have learned, and it's a longer break and things are spread out over a longer period of days. And we're hoping that, the spike that we've seen in the overall numbers, I wouldn't say tapers off, but stops accelerating. And if that's the case, and our numbers are in the school district what they were, coming back from Thanksgiving, then we fully expect to go back to hybrid.
What I also noted, and it was in the most recent release by the state, and that is they did an analysis of where these, shall we say, spread events, I'll call them, were initiated. And that's why I was bringing this to your attention. It turns out that from the data they can get, and they've been collecting it for a bit, and how much it applies to Littleton is an open question, but it's pretty close to 45% occur in households. In other words, this is not on the schools. Please understand this. This is, believe it or not, the schools are not in any of these numbers even close to shall we say, ahead of a pack. They're not. It's coming into because of the tracing and all the rest. It's possible to determine going backwards where it initiates, and the longer the holiday, the more opportunities there are for visits and relaxation of vigilance, and there's a whole list of things that occurs among people who know each other or socialize within households. In other words, they're in today's parlance, they're not in the household. They come in the household and they spread it in the house. So there's no solution here. You have to use sort of a judgment call. I understand your position, but wouldn't surprise me if what we'll call continued spread of this proceeds for a longer period of time following, shall we say, starting today because of the airport, the travel in and out of Boston, the Boston area, and also the fact that it's going to leak into New Year's, which means even more. So it wouldn't surprise me that, just be vigilant and be prepared to move fast. That's all. I mean, there's nothing you can do.
Right. Louise, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just interested, Mike, where are the most cases at what school level, what high school?
They actually were very evenly distributed. Shaker Lane had fewer cases than any other building, but the rest of the three other buildings, it was pretty evenly spread. It's a small number, so it's hard to really look for a pattern. I mean, we're talking less than 20 overall. But it's 4 or 5 per building over a stretch of time at the most.
It'd be great if you had some testing there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe. Yep.
Yep. Even the at-home test would help. Yep. Sorry. Yep.
All right, Kevin or Gino, do you guys have any questions for Mike at all?
Yeah, why don't they have a nurse there and trying to check them out, these kids, if they're sick or not? I go to the bank and they say, "Are you okay, Gino? Let me check." Boom, boom. You okay? Get in. Why don't we do that for the kids?
We evaluated that during the summer when we were trying to figure out what the best way to reopen was. Yeah. And there was some information, conflicting information about the value of doing that. Yeah. And for us, our nurses have been carrying a big load even without doing that. And we feel that we really wouldn't be able to staff that without bringing on significant resources to do that. So we definitely evaluated it, but again, because we thought, the information that we had indicated that it's really not as valuable as you think it is. So we thought our resource would be better used and allocated in other exercises.
Wouldn't it be better if the parents, they buy something like that? I think I saw something that worth about $40, $49, something like that. So they have the parents, and before the kids go to school, they check them out. Okay, you're not feeling good today. You stay home. Maybe that way will be resolved. You don't have 20 people getting sick, and other people will not get sick. I go to Market Basket. I put my mask on, and I see some of them. I say, look, you got to put a mask on. I don't care who they are. I just tell them. For your own good. The parents maybe should buy something like that. They buy big cars, they buy limousine, they buy Rolls Royce, they buy Mercedes-Benz. Buy one of those things that you can check and see if they're sick, and that way eliminate your problem.
Right. We are definitely consistently messaging our parents and staff to make sure they understand that they should not be coming to school if they don't feel well, if they have any symptoms at all. And we feel that that's been, a meaningful effort, and we've gotten good compliance on that. But, I see your point, Gino.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing. You do the best thing you can. The question is sometimes some parents, they want to see the kids go to school. Yeah, they don't realize sometimes they're sick or not sick. You know what I mean? The question is when they come home, they get their parents sick. Yep. We have 58, whatever, people having the virus, and then we go to the bank. Now they're shutting the bank. I can't even go inside the bank. I got to call them up. I said, look, I don't have any problem. Some other people have it. You can check me in. One bank, they said, okay, Gino, 1 minute. They come with a little gun there. Oh, you're okay. You can go in. No problem.
Great. Kevin, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gino. Kevin.
Hi, Mike. This is Kevin. Just a quick question. I was just hoping you could reiterate the definition of a close contact for Littleton schools and what you guys are determining as close contact.
We're using whatever the Jim Gareffi staff is telling us to use. Our close contact participation is driven, at least as I understand it, by the Neshoba Board of Health, and then our staff is cooperating and adhering to those standards. So I don't know them off the top of my head. I just am confident that that's the methodology we're following in the procedures.
And have you considered adopting the change that the CDC had made earlier in the month regarding the close contact status?
Again, we're working with the Neshoba Board of Health. So whatever they're telling us is what we're going to generally conform to. So if that's what they're advocating, then we would certainly consider that. I'm not involved in the day-to-day decisions on that. That's the work of the administration, the nurses and the principals and the superintendent with the Board of Health or the health agency. So I'd have to check on that.
Okay.
You do the best thing you can.
At least I can speak to that if you like.
Sure, Jim. Sorry.
So, Kevin, I think the change you're talking about is they're talking about a cumulative time as opposed to a straight 15 minutes of cumulative. So that is part of our narrative whenever we talk to any of the nursing staff. Certainly in a classroom situation, in open office kind of space, we talk about that. So, yeah, we're incorporating that cumulative 15 minutes when we look at close contacts for schools, for any place, essentially.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. I have Louise, Janet, there's somebody with a hand raised.
Yes, someone named John has their hand raised. You can speak.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
John.
Yeah, it's John Kurzwick, 171 Hartwell. Yeah, I just joined in a little late, but I did hear some conversation about trying to get testing in the school. And I want to, so I'm an engineer by training. So when it comes to testing, you got to make sure that the tests are accurate and you're measuring the right thing. So one of the things that has come up recently, and I don't know if this Board of Health is aware of it, but the World Health Organization has put out a notice for PCR testing and related to accuracy. One of the problems that we have, and I think this problem is appearing somewhat in our cases that we have, is that the PCR testing, there's a couple of issues with it. One of them is that the cycle count that's used in some cases, but not all tests, is above 35 cycles. And Dr. Fauci himself said anything over 35 cycles is likely, very likely, unlikely to actually culture a virus. There's also another paper out there that is asking that they retract the original Drosten test. Part of the reason for that Drosten PCR test, they did not pick whole chain nucleosides. So one of the things I'm hoping that this Board of Health is looking at is the latest science and the latest notices from the World Health Organization. But not only that, CDC as well has given a notice on the antigen testing. The antigen test should only be used really as a presumptive test, and really it needs to be confirmed with a PCR test. So could somebody on this board explain whether or not they are aware of the World Health Bulletin, and are there going to be policy changes associated with testing based on that bulletin?
Just a quick comment. The World Health Organization proviso on that has to do with a particular set of reagents that are essential for, shall we say, preserving the limits of accuracy acceptable to the clinical world. There has been variation in the batches that have gone through the World Health Organization quality control, and what you saw was a general alert about that. The issues around PCR being having, shall we say, some issue with accuracy is a function of, shall we say, who puts together the components of the kit and who puts and the origin of those reagents. As far as the cycles are concerned, that's pretty old news. We've known about this almost from the very beginning. As far as the antigen testing, that has well-known inherent issues. It can be very useful under certain circumstances. It depends, like any test, what are you testing for? So it's basically what is the purpose of the testing. In a school setting, what we're talking about here, there's an effort going forward to take a look at, shall we say, various sources for doing what would be the PCR test, PCR methodology. And there are many issues, not issues, but there's almost a checklist now of what we'll call quality control. Your comments are welcomed, especially in view of the fact that if and when and as the vaccine becomes more available, it'll be even more important that we use some of the best quality reagents until everybody is vaccinated and the virus, for a change, is under control.
Well, if I could just follow up. I think the reagent issue is just one issue, but my big concern here is that essentially we're going about testing, and in some cases, so for instance, in the Moderna and Pfizer clinical trials, they didn't. This is how they qualified a case according to the protocol. A case was somebody that actually had symptoms and had a PCR test with a cycle value 35 or below. Now, our public health agencies are using antigen tests, they're using PCR tests alone, and they're calling those cases.
Excuse me. I think the question, your comments are appreciated, but in the setting that you mentioned about an individual, what's missing here is what is the purpose? What was the setting? If it's an individual test, if you have what we'll call the random test, where someone comes in and wants to know they have the symptoms, do I have it or not, in a, shall we say, small clinical setting, that's a different issue entirely than basically trying to detect cases that have some statistical significance in the school.
But you cannot culture. This is the problem, and I will send the board the paper. You can't culture a virus.
Excuse me, John. We just were talking. Can I just interrupt you, John? We were talking with Mike Fontanella about the way schools were opening and going to be reopening after the holidays, and we kind of got into this testing question and conversation.
Well, yeah, but one of the reasons why Mike Fontanella, this is one of the reasons why I called in, is I called into the school board the other day, and I said, how are we going to get, what is the vision for getting kids in school 5 days a week? And Mike Fontanella said, no, cases have to come down. They have to come down to where they need to be. Now, that doesn't sound like it's a hard plan, but he said they have to come down. But now we have a scenario where we have public health people saying, hey, you know what would be a great idea? Let's start testing everybody and everybody's doorknob. And we're going to get cases from here until I don't know, it's going to be March. March is when the cases will go down. That's when we'll start seeing cases go down. You know why? Because we have the Hive longitudinal study. The Hive longitudinal study shows coronaviruses are highly seasonal and they go down in about March. So that's what we're looking at. Okay. So all this testing, it's causing essentially a Chinese fire drill. Everybody's running around trying to, okay, we have a 16-year-old kid with a cycle count of 40. Okay, let's go contact trace this kid that probably doesn't even have culturable virus, and we're running around spinning our wheels. So, and that's why I'm starting to get a little upset with it, is because we have a scenario where we're testing everybody, we're testing all these things, but what is the testing telling us? We're quarantining people that probably aren't even infectious. So that's where I am on that.
Okay. Oh, thanks for your comments. I'm not exactly sure. We haven't even started testing. We're in the process of, our town administrators in the process of contacting a organization and trying to implement some testing once they meet. So it's not going to be every kid. It's going to be what kind of testing is it called, Mike? It's not invest. I've got the two things.
Surveillance.
I'm sorry?
Surveillance?
Surveillance, right. So it's going to be some surveillance testing, but that is still up in the air right now. So,
Lisa, I was wondering if Mike could maybe run through quickly his background. It's just for John. I don't know if John's still on, but just John maybe feel more comfortable that we do have someone experienced in the virus world. It's not like everybody else. We're just normal people, but Mike has a lot of experience, and we also have the people helping us. What we used to call our COVID team, but so it's not just us making decisions. We have, a wealth of information helping us out.
Well, information.
I don't know if John's still there or not, but.
all right. So if you want to do that, Mike, briefly, just if is John still on, Janet or Dave?
Yeah, he's still in the audience.
Mike, do you feel like running through your resume real quick, or?
Well, the only piece I think that would give John consolation is the fact that just because I have a PhD in molecular biology with virology thrown in means that what scares me the most is lack of, shall we say, my lack of total understanding of the virus. I'm learning something new about this every day, along with hundreds of colleagues around the world. And all I have to say is we're all in this boat together, and I hear you loud and clear. I'm just trying to reassure you that a lot of people are doing the best we can. And I know you probably do understand that testing has worked quite successfully when implemented in a way that is directed at a particular question that is worth asking, which is how do we reduce the risk, and how do we get people back, shall we say, to their jobs, to their family, et cetera. And when the history is written about all this, I'm sure you'll discover just where things went really off the rails. And I can tell you that the testing issue by itself has its own story, and I'm sure you'll appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Lisa.
No, thank you, Mike. We're lucky to have you. All right, so let's move on. Scott's here with us to the public hearing on Ivy Road. We'll get back to public comments and the COVID update, but I just wanted to get Mike Fontanella's comments on schools. Ian's here, and Jim, you got a chance to meet with Ian and work out some of those issues with the lot there.
We did talk back and forth.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ian, but I can't.
Ian Rubin speaking.
Yeah.
Hi. Just to give you a brief update where we are, I got some comments from Jim, which I addressed and sent him plans, but that was yesterday. So I'm not sure that Jim has had a chance to review the changes, but they were mostly minor technicalities or additional information. I don't think that really changes much. I'm happy to bring the plan. I can show you the plan if I can bring it in, if you want to see it. I don't know, though. Jim might just want to address where we are at this point. One change I did make, well, two major changes were made. One is I provided a clay line swale instead of the trench drain I'd originally proposed. And I removed the fill at the bottom of the wall and made the wall a little deeper into the ground. So that's essentially where we are. Briefly, I can say that swale has the capacity. It's a 6-inch deep swale, V-shaped, has the capacity to carry 4.8 CFS maximum, and any kind of water anywhere from that road or from the site would ever amount that amount. The equivalent of 4.8 CFS is 4 acres of lawn in a 100-year storm. That's the kind of water you would get in 4.8 CFS. So the capacity way surpasses anything that we need to address here. But I put it in because that was requested. And that should certainly make sure that there is no runoff that is being diverted onto our abutters' property.
Ian, could you share your plans with us? Well, and
Lisa, no access. 1 second to try and make him a panelist, so he'll be able to do that.
Okay.
Dave, can you bring
in? I can picture where your trench drain is.
That's an option.
Jim, do you have, while Ian is getting that, trying to get that up, Jim, do you have any your comments?
So I spoke with the abutters engineer, and he explained what his concerns were. Then I reviewed the plan, talked to Ian, explained to Ian what the concerns were. And again, the idea is there's a little bit of, and kind of, this is information I provided in, that, you know, I can see the abutters concerned that there's a little bit of natural swale through that lot right now. And so I guess that would be the concern. So I explained to Ian what the abutters concerns were. I talked to the building inspector because the wall will actually need to get a permit because it's going to be high enough. Trying to get both grading at the toe of the slope of the wall and get some kind of drainage swale in there. Obviously, you ran out of space, so I'm happy to see you pulled the soil out. So I did take a look at the plan briefly before the meeting. To me, seems to address the things we talked about. I think the abutters' concerns were your water coming down the road, and now the lot's full, so it doesn't have a place to go. It would seem like it now has space to go around the system, you know, around the wall, around the system with the clay line swale. I guess at this point here, I think last time I mentioned I thought it met the code. And you know, with the adjustments with the swale, I think that should, you know, as long as that all gets properly installed, should be able to divert the water around and prevent it from going on the abutter site.
Okay, so you don't think you have a problem with the design?
Yeah, again, what we're concerned about is trying to make enough room and make swale, a trench, whatever, to be able to pull the water around the lot so that it doesn't want to back up onto the abutter site. And yeah, I understand Ian's comments about the amount of water that it could handle. I have a little bit harder time visualizing. So I think when the ground is thawed, I don't know, say 9 months out of the year when the water can actually absorb water, the ground can absorb water, we're fine. But you all know that we'll get, you know, kind of January, February, even into March, the ground is frozen and we get 2 inches of water all of a sudden. Those are the concerns that I have, and you know, something like that swale allows water to move around the lot even if the ground is frozen and get to the back of the property.
Okay. Does this house have a basement, a full basement, or is it on a slab? Ian?
Ian, maybe you can bring up the sketch that shows the foundation and explain that.
Hello?
Yep.
Can you see the sketch?
Can you bring up the site plan, Ian? They were asking about the full basement, the basement. You can kind of explain how you've handled that.
Bring up the site plan. Yeah, I thought I had it up.
This is the scaled profile plan and the details.
Are you seeing the scaled profile?
Yes.
Oh, that's strange. Okay.
We did see the plans earlier.
Yeah, I'm okay. You are sharing screen. Let's do that.
There you go.
Do you see that now, or?
Nope. Just some writing.
Yeah, the letter is up.
Oh, the letter's up. Okay, let me take this. Tell you. I get it. Oh, now we get it. Do you see that, or?
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Now we're all on the same page. Okay. So here's the the area of the actual basement. The rest of this is slab.
Oh, okay.
So the garage and slab, to make sure that the basement is 20 and a half feet away from the trench. So that there's adequate room in the basement for utilities and so on, and the outlet to the tank. But the rest will be slab.
Okay.
And this is where the clay line swale goes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I've lost track. What is the variance request?
The variance is because we have a retaining wall within 10 feet of the sideline.
Okay.
So it's filled within the lot line and the use of a retaining wall.
Yeah.
Any board members have any questions?
Are you going to put a swell there with stone?
No, that's a clay line swale or concrete line swale. I mean,
okay, I got it. Concrete.
Yeah.
Okay.
I provide a detail to show how that needs to be built, and it's 3 feet wide, 4 feet totally, 3 feet in the V shape.
Beautiful. How deep is it?
6 inches, 3-to-1 side slope. And I calculated what the capacity of that was, as I was explaining in the beginning. That is close to 5 cubic feet per second, and it's a substantial amount of water.
Louise, Kevin, or Mike, do you guys have any questions?
I don't.
So, does anybody want to make a motion?
I think the abutter and the engineer in the audience.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Sorry, thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Anybody with a hand raised? Janet?
Not seeing any hands raised.
John Amato, is his hand raised? Is that the engineer for the abutters?
Let me look. Sorry.
That is the engineer for the abutter.
Can you guys hear me?
Sure. Yep, John. Go ahead.
Hi, this is John Amato, representing Greg and Tina. And one of the things that I had mentioned was this area right here, and Ian put a swale in, but the water's going to still run this way. And the idea was that if you just raise the elevation of the grade right here along the property line in the street, that water would no longer go that way, because the existing grade here is higher than the road. And the road runs in here and it takes a corner and goes this way. So the idea is if you just put a berm here, just elevate the grade 6 inches, the water would no longer go that way onto Greg's property. And you wouldn't have to spend the effort for a big swale. I'm not sure how we got to the big swale, but it seems like they didn't want to just continue this berm. There's an oak tree right here. I think it's an oak tree, right at near the corner right here. And around the base of that oak tree, you can clearly see it's about 6 inches higher than the road bed. And the idea was just to continue that grade down. It doesn't change anything in the yard. In fact, it might make this part of the yard a little more usable as a front yard.
So John, we're not seeing your plan, we see Ian's plan. So when you're talking about these corners, we don't see what you're talking about.
And John, we're also getting a lot of feedback. Do you have some other device that's on?
Oh, and yeah, let me just, Greg was in my ear, I'm sorry. Can you still see, you can't see what I'm talking about, okay.
Right, Ian, maybe need to...
So that I can wave my magic hand across it. It would just take a second. I apologize. I had the map on the screen, and I was happily marking it and looking at it, and I just forgot that you guys couldn't see it. All right, let's see. All right. Okay, and let's see how I can share the screen.
If you're looking at my screen still, there's a picture of Ivy Road.
Yep.
And you can see that it's crowned. So the only water it gets is half of the road and 15 feet of my frontage.
I got it.
And that's a very small amount of water. To worry about what's coming from the road down our property is, I mean, it's 0.01 CFS on a 5 CFS swale. It's nothing.
Oh boy.
Madam Chairman, may I ask Mr. Jim a question at this point, please?
Of course, Mike.
Okay. As far as meeting the code for the proposed system, this particular plan for the system meets, shall we say, with the variance requested, meets our requirements as the Board of Health. Is that the case?
So two things. The plan meets Title V. Your regulations talk about fill within 10 feet of the lot line and the use of retaining walls. So it complies with Title V. You would need to grant a variance and allow approval, allow the use of a retaining wall by approving it for it to meet your regulations.
Okay.
So I understand what you're talking about, Mike, but we need to let Mr. Amato comment too.
The only reason, I'm sorry, the reason I ask this is Mr. Amato's comments seem to be about things not related directly to the system.
So I think, Mike, just to kind of answer your question there, because your regulations are above and beyond Title V, they need to, I would say, as your agent, they need to address this concern of, because they're pushing against the lot lines with fill, they need to address this so that we're not affecting abutters as part of this being compliant. So if you're allowing the variance, hopefully they've made modifications to address the issue.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Amato, do you have your screen available to share?
I do. Hang on. Let me get it back up top here and view options. Nope. I need to view. I don't have an option to share my screen. Here we go. I still don't have an option to share my screen.
I've just promoted you to panelist. Hold on a second.
He needs to turn on his video, doesn't he?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right. When this road is frozen and covered with snow and ice is melting and snow is melting, this road is higher than this property. And the water does run down to this natural, you can see as the contours turn this way, the water goes this way. It's going to do it. I realize there's some ruts in the road, but ruts in the road fill with ice and snow and everything changes. And all we asked for was to change the grade here slightly, 4 to 6 inches, to prevent water from turning the corner and heading this way. That was all we asked for in this area. The need for a swale was, if he thinks he needs a swale, I don't think he needs a swale there. I think he needs to change the grade here. And then all the water that comes down, King Street and the property right here, and a portion can come down and just ride in the gutter and come down over here. And that was the biggest concern because that's the bulk of the runoff that we're going to see. So I don't think that the development of this design is going to change that. In fact, it will encourage water to come this way. This is a this is a paved driveway or is this a dirt driveway?
That's a paved driveway.
Paved driveway, and a paved driveway will elevate the road in this area and encourage that water to go this way. The paved driveway will act like a little bit of a dam and push water this way.
But there's no water coming that way. I mean, I've just shown the photograph. You can see that a crown
Okay,
road.
all right, gentlemen, okay.
I'm sorry.
Jim, what do you think about that? Is that something that can be done?
Well, I mean, absolutely. I would be happy to put in a berm there, 6-inch berm, and take away the swale. Absolutely. I'd rather put a berm there and take away the swale.
So I guess the only thing, Lisa, I would want to do is talk to the highway super, the town engineer, make sure,
That's right.
Because that's going to be in the street right away, make sure that he's okay with that.
Okay. All right. All right, if you can do that, Jim, and you guys are willing to change that, then we can, I guess we can continue this to another meeting. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right. So is that correct, Janet? Do we need to make a motion to continue it, or?
Yes, if you're going to continue it, please leave.
All right. Everybody think that that's something we should do, is continue it and make sure that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. So
I second it.
I need a motion,
Oh, I thought you, I'm sorry.
I make a motion to continue the Ivy Road project till next meeting.
Okay.
I second.
All right, we'll have a roll call. Kevin Baker.
Yes.
Gino Fratelloni.
Yes.
Louise Nichols.
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin.
Mike Zeldin, yes.
And Lisa Flanagan, yes. So do you think you guys will have a chance to talk? I know it's the holidays. We're planning, again, a meeting on the 30th, as far as I know.
Do you want to have a meeting on the, do you want to have them on the 30th, or do you want them to have them come on the second week when you're here doing hearings?
They've been here like 3 times. Do you guys think that you can? Yeah, you probably should.
It depends on if they can get to Chris Stoddard or not.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if we can talk to Chris and Chris is okay with it, I don't see a reason why it couldn't be. It should be pretty quick.
Okay. But with the holidays and everything,
yeah,
there's like that's only 1, 2. That would be the 3rd business day. You think it can happen that quickly?
Worst case is that we bump it out to your next meeting.
Okay.
So, if you're going to have a meeting on the 30th, I'm okay with trying to track Chris down between now and then.
Okay. All right.
Talking to him
yeah, let's do that, because these people have been in front of us a couple of weeks now. So let them get their project going if that's what's happening.
Yep.
So we'll continue it to the meeting on the 30th. All right.
Right. 7 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ian and John and Jim. So we're going to move on to the COVID update. And Scott, you've been patient. Should we have Scott start and then, or Jim? Okay, let's have Scott start.
Or Jim. I mean, right now, we continue to get the updates from Jim on a daily basis as far as the count in town. Seems to be hovering right around that average of 35 to 40-ish in that 2-week period. It's from our perspective, it seems to be more and more of our medicals that we're dealing with are resulting in positive COVID, outcomes within a few hours of our transport. So we're really still continue to treat everybody the same.
Is that from the nursing home, or is that just?
No, that's everywhere.
Really?
Yeah, it's more so out in the public than anything else. It's pretty much everywhere across town. Just depends on the week. You know, we one of the things that we're really seeing is the household outbreaks, and you know, once it's in the household, it's pretty much affecting everyone. We'll see how the numbers turn out after the holiday.
Yeah.
We are looking forward. We did get the notification through Jim that they're looking at starting the first round of vaccine.
Right.
Either on the 4th or the 11th. So that's a little bit fluid, but everybody's preparing for that. So you know, that's a positive thing moving forward. But we just continue talking to Jim on a regular basis and keep that line of communications open. We're in pretty good shape, though.
Do you guys know what kind you're getting? Which vaccine you're getting?
I believe it's the Moderna.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Scott? No. Thanks for letting Santa ride in your truck last week, Scott.
Yeah, no worries. It was a good afternoon. It was a long ride.
You put some mileage on.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right. Jim, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Sure. So I just kind of follow on Scott's conversation about the vaccine. So a week ago, Department of Public Health sent out a survey to the health districts and the large cities and towns saying, you know, we need to start doing some planning for clinics for first responders. So they asked us to start to put together some numbers, which I did, sent it out to all the chiefs, police and fire, EMS in our district. As the assistant commissioner who sits in our meeting for the Department of Public Health said, things are moving fast. It would be the Moderna vaccine because we wouldn't have the ability to do cold storage for Pfizer's. We have no idea amounts. We've provided numbers we think we could do. We have a site if we need to do it or when we need to do it. We were told today on our district meeting, they don't see it happening any sooner than the 11th of January. Again, we're trying to plan something without a whole lot of information from Department of Public Health, and I get it because I think they're waiting probably for information to give to us. We hope to have it, according to the assistant commissioner, probably the first of next week. We'll have some more concrete information. So we're proceeding with planning with the idea that we'll get Moderna's vaccine. We're going to try to do probably like a 2-day clinic to try to accommodate both on-call and full-time first responders. We'll set up subsequent clinics to do the second vaccine or the second dose of the vaccine. That's the outline of what it is we're looking at. We need the Department of Public Health to kind of fill in the rest of it so we can do a little more specific planning. So it's underway, the planning. So just some other updates. The governor spoke again this week. It's always great when he speaks because that just means we have more things to do. And so the new order, the new temporary order, I guess maybe 59, adjusts all of the gathering limits. So really brings everything down to 25% capacity. We're waiting for some more firm information. They have a nice chart in the order so you can see what's affected. But again, that's going to, for at least the next couple, I think it goes through January 10th or 11th. And then I guess it'll be reviewed at that point to see if it continues on. So it adjusts capacity everywhere to, and the chart has the specifics. So I don't want to just make a blanket statement. There's a chart there that needs to be followed, and we'll work with people with that chart. We anticipate probably more formal information sometime before the 26th so that we have a better tool to actually do enforcement with and education. I did go by the supermarkets. It was very timely, the governor's press conference, so I could explain the concern the board has and the need to keep the supermarkets open and safe. They were well received. The Market Basket will send it up to corporate. I had a long conversation with Donlands. One of the nice things, I guess, about all of this computerized stuff is they can tell me the numbers in their stores at a given time by hours. So, I think what I explained to him, and it sounds like they're well under there. Even he was giving me numbers from the snowstorm day, and it sounds like it's even under the governor's current or the new occupancy limit. So there is a perception that stores are crowded, and I think that perception comes from the cash registers and when people are checking out. So a big part of our conversation was what can be done to kind of manage that space. And I think they do it now. I know when I'm in shopping, if carriages start to build behind registers, supermarkets seem to add more cashiers so they can move those lines. And I said to him, I think that's probably one of the most important things you can do to move people out of the store. Again, some of the other detail they're able to provide, the length of time, a transaction takes, a long order may take 5 minutes with that person so, I mean, they have a sense of those numbers and can respond with the concerns that I've expressed from the board. And then to speak to Scott's point also about cases, I pulled the numbers and provided them for Mike today. The last 2 week period, which would have ended the 19th, the numbers are 40. I think the total cases are 40, which are less than the 2 week trailing period before. So I don't know if that's a trend. I'm hoping it is. We'll see what the holidays bring. And I think that's the storm. I'm crossing my fingers, Mike. And I guess that's the end of the report that I have for you.
Mike, Jim, can you just say, just remind me, what's the numbers for indoor, outdoor, public versus private? I've got it online. I'm not sure if this is the newest one.
So I'm looking at the chart. And again, I think indoor, outdoor events, the chart has 10 for indoor, 25 for outdoor.
And this is private residence. And what about public?
So the public is that there. I think 10 and 25, I think, is also for the private residents. I don't have that chart up in front of me, but that is the same, I think, as in the order, the order that this kind of goes on top of. Okay. So what you really need to do is read order 57 and order 59 together.
Yeah. I have something in front of me that I'm looking at. Indoor gatherings at event venues or in public settings are limited to maximum of 25 people. That's gatherings at event venues and in public settings. So
yeah,
sounds like 25.
10 indoor, 25 outdoor.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now there's so one of the things, there was a question I think it'll probably come up later on about certain types of gatherings. So places of worship outdoors, I think there's still an exemption for outdoor worship gatherings because if you read these two orders together, there's an exemption in order 57 for outdoor worship events, if you want, for the lack of a better services. Indoor have to follow the workplace standards. Outdoors seem to have an exemption for the numbers. Also, political gatherings for political expression. Again, if it's an outdoor event, it's not bound. And I just need to get a clarification. If this order 59 resets all of or temporarily suspends that order, the numbers in that order, and institutes these numbers that are in 59, I think that exemption is still in existence if I read the two orders together.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions for Jim or Scott?
No.
And no hands up, Janet? All right.
Nope.
Thanks, guys.
Hope you
Merry
get this
Merry
stuff,
Christmas.
Hope you get this
And
stuff.
you'll stay on for a few?
What's that?
You'll stay on for a few?
Sure.
Katrina's here, so we'll move on to her update.
Hi.
Hi, Katrina.
Hi.
I don't know. I think Scott and Jim stole a lot of my thunder. I'm okay with that. You guys can see my slides, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thank you for being so efficient with your slides.
Yeah, this is not a skill I want to perfect, I'll be honest. I'll go back to not doing speedy analyses. This is the front page of today's dashboard from the DPH. Today, there was a reported 4,500 cases. Most of those are still aged 59 and younger. There were over 2,000 in the hospital, and of those, 400 are in the ICU. Today, we had 81 deaths reported. And as Jim mentioned, Governor Baker is lowering capacity limits and in some major sectors and gathering limits. So the goal of that, he was very specific in his press conference, was to limit the number of people in those places so spread doesn't happen. You don't have clusters forming in those offices and restaurants and things right after the holidays. But also, so that kind of mitigation layer is similar to what the school decided to do by going remote the week after New Year's. It's the same idea as if you don't have people in there, you can't have spread happening. But he also was hoping to send a very clear message that we really shouldn't be out and about right now. So by making it harder to be out and about, he's hoping people will stay home. That's the goal.
He begged us to stay home.
He actually did say, "I am begging you to stay home."
Yeah.
So there's nothing else he can do other than to beg, unfortunately. The one thing I do want to point out is the time to getting your test results has increased an entire day in the last week. I'm not sure what that's about, but that's not a good sign that is taking longer for people to get tests back. So this is the curve from March. We all know we're in our second curve, and our second curve is about 2 times higher than it was back in March. You guys know that's because we're mixing, things are open, we're still socializing, things like that. The one thing you can see is the dip for Thanksgiving happened here, and then we had a near vertical exponential increase in the number of cases. And you can see over the last week, it's flattened. That's about a week and a half, actually. So we've had a slowing trend, which is good. That means that the exponential rise following the surge following Thanksgiving hasn't just kept going. We've kind of hit pause. We had to put our foot on the brake for a week. But unfortunately, we are facing Christmas and New Year. So we're going to see what happens coming out of those 2 gathering holidays, if you will. But the other thing I want to point out is that, before Thanksgiving, here's where our rates were, and now we're here. So although we've paused, we are still twice as high as we were before Thanksgiving. So there is still more COVID circulating among our community and our state than there was prior to Thanksgiving. So there's more chance that you will become exposed to COVID at this point.
Looks like twice as high as May too, right?
Yes, definitely. It's twice as high as May. So the red line is Thanksgiving, just to keep us, since the date is still there, it's an easy one to find. But this is the number of daily confirmed cases over the past 6 weeks. And there's been a clear escalation in the number of cases since Thanksgiving, and it's flattened in the last week or so. We're actually a little lower. So when we get to testing, I'll show you those numbers too, because there seems to be less testing happening, and I don't quite understand that. But so there seems to be just a slowing trend happening. We've plateaued, if you will. So this is this graph is based off numbers in the weekly DPH report that came out last Thursday, which I think was the 17th. This again looks at each age group as its own line, and we're still in almost the same order. Those 59 and younger are really the ones with the highest rates. I've noticed that the 80-year-olds are actually starting to, unfortunately, rise above the other age groups in this lower bracket here. So that has been a steady climb for 80-year-olds, unfortunately. I'm not sure what that is happening there. But again, no age group is sheltered. Everyone's exposed. And the governor was as part of the press conference earlier this week, he was saying that the hospital healthcare staff actually can see, based on who's coming in with COVID and COVID symptoms, that the intergenerational mixing at Thanksgiving really impacted who they are seeing now. It had a big shift from younger people to much more older people, unfortunately. So we can just, I think these are going to keep rising. We'll probably hit a slowing trend tomorrow when they release the new data, but it will just keep happening. So this is the number of tests conducted, not with results. This is just the number of tests done. Again, Thanksgiving's marked with a red line. And the testing levels have been pretty consistent from before Thanksgiving to after Thanksgiving. But I had noticed that there is this, we've had more days lower in the last 6 days. And what I don't know is if this is because test results are taking longer to come back and therefore they don't have a count of them being done until they have a result. I'm not sure about that. Or if there are just not as many people seeking testing, or the other thing that could be happening is colleges have been sending their students home for winter break. So therefore those college testing programs in the colleges may not be happening anymore. And that might lower our numbers for a while here. So something to keep an eye on in the next few weeks as we try to figure out what's happening with testing.
I think people are just busy getting ready for the holiday and not testing maybe too.
Well, and we had a slight increase in testing right before Thanksgiving as people were trying to use that as a strategy to protect themselves and their family. And I'm wondering if, like we had this record high day on the Monday before Thanksgiving. And the Monday would be what here? 47,000 or 80,000. Sorry, wrong date. 21st would be Monday. We had 80,000. So the difference between the 80,000 to 130,000, I mean, that's a lot of tests to suddenly for 3 days before a holiday. So either maybe people are going to stay home for Christmas. Maybe they don't need to test because they're not going to gather or travel. Or there's less testing because the colleges have already sent their kids home and so they're not doing those tests. Or there's a lot of different reasons that this could be. And I think we won't know until another week when we see what the data tells us then. Mm-hmm. So this is the graph of test positivity by date. This gives us an idea of how widespread COVID is across the state. And so before Thanksgiving, the test positivity was 3.4%. And then at the 2 weeks after, blue line, 3.4%. And the 2 weeks after we hit 6%, and then we've plateaued. So we're staying around 6%. It's dipped a little bit in recent days. I'm not sure why, but it's still around 6%. So we had the escalation in the number of cases, and then we've paused. So we'll see what Christmas does to, and New Year's does to this number. These are still higher than it was before Thanksgiving. So we still have more COVID circulating in our communities and across the state. So the orange line is when you take out the college testing, that like routine surveillance testing that college were doing. And I'll get to that in a second because I think it might help us understand the earlier comment from tonight. So when you take out that kind of testing, you end up with much higher proportion, in part because the state's testing is based on symptoms. So people who have symptoms or have a known exposure are told to test, and that makes your proportion positive higher. If you look at the blue line at the bottom, it's starting of college-based testing started back in August, and you can see that it's been just flat the whole time, a little rise after Thanksgiving. But again, it's less than 1% positive. And so this is the kind of line that we're hoping to, that's the kind of testing program that we would want to see for like our schools. So the goal, like the benefit of that kind of routine testing where people are getting tested often is that you can proactively catch a case before they have a chance to spread to a lot of people. So you catch them, they're positive, you can send them off to get a PCR or a secondary test just to make sure, but isolate them in the meantime so that they don't have a chance to interact and spread to other people. And that helps keep your case counts low and your test positivity low. And that helps keep things like schools and colleges open. So the goal of a testing program in our schools would be to actually keep it open. And you would do that by catching cases early before you have an outbreak or spreading event. So just the data that's kind of a nice endpoint to point to for that earlier conversation. So this is the number of hospitalizations reported on every day for COVID patients. They continue to steadily rise. Like we hit a little pause around Thanksgiving and it's just gone up. Just continues to truck up. So keep in mind that hospitalizations are a lagging indicator. It comes 3 weeks after a case is to, on average, it takes 3 weeks for a case to end up in the hospital. So those cases that we're seeing hospitalized now are those that were, that became a case like Thanksgiving or the week after is where we are right now. So any case, the 5,000 cases we had today or 4,500 cases we have today, we expect them to hit the hospital the second week of January or so. So hospitals and healthcare resources are a concern right now. Governor Baker actually announced that they are going to stop all non-emergency elective procedures like surgeries right now, starting, I think, on Saturday. So anything that's not cancer or like a heart attack or any of those things are emergencies, they'll keep doing them. But they're trying to conserve beds for all the other things and staff. So for COVID patients, expecting another surge after Christmas and New Year's. So they're actually, if you have a back issue, a knee replacement, things like that, that's the kind of stuff they'll probably postpone until things get better. So this is the non-ICU hospital capacity. And right now, non-ICU beds are 85% full across the state. It's pretty consistent across all regions. And this is the ICU capacity, which is at 76% full. And there are these are both indicators that our healthcare system is under strain. And that's the reason why they are stopping non-emergency surgeries and things, because they need all the staff and all the beds they can get at this point, expecting another surge. This is the pressure on the healthcare system is the reason the governor has been trying to walk this balance of like opening an economy versus pressure on the healthcare system where it gets overwhelmed and it can't care for patients. And we've hit that point where he's really pulling back on capacity limits and gathering limits and telling people to stay home for the holidays, because our healthcare system is getting to the full point. And if they can't care for patients, then has bad outcomes for patients who need hospital care. So this is the number of deaths reported by date, COVID positive deaths. So this is the last indicator and also the most final indicator. The number, this is just for the last 6 weeks. And again, Thanksgiving is the red line. At the beginning of November, there was about 20 deaths reported each day. And at this point, we are regularly over 40 cases reported each day. And if the healthcare system and hospitals get overwhelmed, then the nurses and the doctors don't have time to care for patients in the best manner, then that's when the death rates will start rapidly rising. So we're trying to not get to the point where the death rates rise as rapidly as they did in the spring. So this is the outcomes for contact tracing. So last 2 weeks, I think I shared this. This is in the weekly DPH report. And so at Thanksgiving, the week after Thanksgiving, you can see this is the number of cases that contact tracers were able to, the outcomes of their contacts with them. And the gray segment is the proportion not reached at all. This week, it's 30.6%. The last 2 times reports this came out. So the first 2 in December, these were 40%. So this is an indicator that the contact tracing system's kind of overwhelmed, or people aren't answering their phone. But if you're not getting a hold of a contact tracer, then they can't figure out who the contacts are, and they can't follow up with the contacts. You can't get instructions about testing and quarantining and isolation. And there's more support to that too, I know. So it's really important for people to be answering the phone, but also if the system's overwhelmed and your contact tracing is falling behind, then that's another indicator that things are kind of out of control and really widespread. So we're going to get into some local data. So this is the color things again. At this point, I'm not sure I need to show that anymore. So Littleton is based off cases. This is Jim's Maven sneak peek that he does for us on Wednesdays. So we have the most recent data. Today, Jim reported out to Mike that there were 40 cases, which is an improvement over the last week, last 2 weeks. So 2 weeks ago, so I'm going to compare it to 2 weeks ago because this is a distinct group of patients. So on the 12/9 Maven sneak peek, Jim pulled out 53. This week we were 40, so there's a slight lowering. I would say, much like the state, this is probably a plateau, a kind of a pause or the calm before the storm, potentially, depending on what happens over Christmas. You can see that we've had an ongoing upward trend over the end of October since Jim's been pulling this right through to now. And a couple doubling events have happened. So we had between 11/11 and 11/27, we had a doubling event, and another one on between 11/27 and 12/9. So thankfully, we did not have another doubling event. We've kind of just stopped. So we'll see where this goes next week. So this is the data coming out of the DPH's weekly report. So this will be updated tomorrow. This is, again, the same, the 58 from last week. Jim was off by 1 from the state. It depends on when he pulls it versus when they pull it. But his estimates are very reliable. So they're a good insight. So again, this is traced back to August. You can just see that month over month, we keep having an escalation in the number of cases, and those doubling events are showing up, which is unfortunate. Okay, so this is last week's average daily incidence rates per 100,000 people that we calculate. Littleton had 58 cases last week with a rate of 42.5, which was doubled from the 2 weeks prior to that. We are in red 4 weeks last week. I anticipate we'll stay in red this week, so it'll be 5 weeks. And you can see that while our rates doubled, the rest of the state was increased, but not by as much. So the borders, communities that touch our border went up 60%, surrounding communities, so that one ring out went up 60%. 4095 belt in Middlesex County went up 80% higher, and then the state was 80% higher as well. The state actually hit red last week. And this is the graph, so you can see it as a trend line. Littleton had that flattening right after the holiday. That's a reporting delay. And then as the data caught up, you can see everyone rose, but Littleton had a much steeper rise the week after Thanksgiving. And then we flattened out again. And that's consistent with what Mike Fontanella reported with the number of health notification letters they were sending out to families, and things like that were happening. The data is incredibly consistent for this rapid increase right after Thanksgiving here in Littleton. So this is when we graph the rates by town for those that we touch our border. And again, remember the bright blue line is Littleton, and the black line is the average for all of our communities that we share a border with. And then each individual town has a line. You can see again, Littleton has consistently been higher than the average. We managed to come back down in November after some significant work on Board of Health's part and the select board's part, and just a lot of messaging went out, and we were managed to lower back down to the average in our area. And then right after Thanksgiving, our rate of increase was much steeper than everyone else's we share a border with. Unfortunately, this is Air, and I believe if Air's had a cluster event at Devens, which is driving their curve to look really high. So if you take that out of consideration, Littleton is top on this graph again, which is incredibly unfortunate. So what I worry about is if we had that kind of steep increase and return to the top of the list again for our area, literally the towns that touch our border, what's going to happen after Christmas and New Year's if we don't change what we've done. So hopefully people got the message by now and are making different choices for this next week and a half. So this is the table of test positivity. Interestingly, we had yet again another jump in the number of tests that were performed in our area, people seeking tests, and a jump in our test positivity was 4.86. It was higher compared to 2 weeks prior by almost 2. And everywhere is just trending higher for test positivity, no matter where you look. And our test positivity, sorry, I didn't write that down. I just misread my notes, so just ignore that. I was about to say. So this is the trend line for test positivity. You can see everywhere is on a rapid rise. Again, just like with our cases, we had a delay. Everywhere had a delay rate out of Thanksgiving. And then Littleton's increase was increased at a significantly faster. Our proportion of test positive was higher than the other areas. We increased by more. And then we flattened back down. And everywhere else is kind of flattened to 2 weeks out after Thanksgiving. So again, that like the holiday really impacted the test positivity everywhere, but Littleton had a much stronger impact. So this is something I presented at the select board meeting earlier this week. I took the total number of patients month over month since the DPH has reported weekly by town reports of the number of cases we have. And it's interesting for a couple of reasons. So one, you can see that in the spring, there was the Life Care Center outbreak really drove our numbers. We didn't actually, outside of Life Care Center, we didn't have much COVID in the rest of town. 87 out of the 100 cases in these 2 months, I think were Life Care Center, if I got the report correct, comparing different data points. We actually had no cases reported in June, which was awesome. July and August each had 4 cases, and then school and more reopenings happened across the state. And we had 12 cases in September, 23 in October, 40 in November. So not quite a doubling each time. And then as of last week, there were 77 cases in December, which was equal to the spring, the April, the last highest month we had, except we still had 2 more weeks to go. So this month's cases will be higher than the worst we were back in the spring. And as Scott pointed out that, and Jim has mentioned too, that, and Mike mentioned it earlier, that these are happening in families and household spread. This isn't a cluster event at the Life Care Center. This is happening much more out in the community and within families, and then families who, we don't always know where the first person gets COVID, but once it's in your household, your family tends to get sick. So as everyone mentioned tonight. So anyway, this is kind of analogous to that curve you show for the state where we looked at March, and then we're looking at April, now. Littleton's, where the state goes, Littleton goes. And the other thing I wanted to point out, that means that the last week when we had 58 cases, which captured the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, when you think of it, out of the 258 cases we've had in total to date, those 58 cases are 22% of our total case count to date. So that means 22% of our cases happened right after the holiday. And we really hope that doesn't happen following Christmas and New Year's too. So we'll hopefully not have that trend, but we'll see. Unfortunately, there's some signs that people are not necessarily following CDC and state guidance to stay home. So every health expert, epidemiologist that I've been trying to learn from is really fearful what's going to happen after a week and a half of just a different pattern. You're not going to school, you're not using your mitigation strategies, we're relaxing, we're hanging out with family or friends or potentially. If we do those things, then the prediction is there'll be another surge across the United States, across our state, and potentially here in town. So this was the headline today that I saw from the Boston Globe, that This is a picture of Logan Airport. And in the article, they state that there's an 11% increase from the weekend before Thanksgiving. And that was at Thanksgiving was the highest travel date that they had so far since the pandemic started. So people are still traveling and going around. So I know there are a lot of people who have changed their ways and done the right thing, staying home. I know a lot of people are planning to have, I know our family is, Christmas just amongst those in our house, but there are people who are not doing those things, and that's COVID's going to spread. And so everyone will be at higher risk. So I just want to run through a few of the public health messages. So as we've heard a number of times tonight, household transmission is one of the main ways that COVID spreads. Up to date, 95% of the clusters in Massachusetts are really centered on households. When one person brings it into the household tends to get sick. So when we share air at home, we're just more likely to get sick. So the concern here is if people are gathering with extended family members from outside their household for the holiday and you're staying together in a house, you're sharing air with people from outside your household, that will really increase the risk of spread. So really, we'll keep going those mitigation strategies, but if you are going to gather with people outside of your household, the mask, the distancing, opening the windows, we'll keep going over that stuff, but that you can still do those things if someone in your household is sick or has been exposed, to try to minimize the spread within your own house too. So the other thing that we all know is that social gatherings really increase the spread of COVID. The number of clusters that came out of social gatherings in the DPH's weekly report, the number of clusters for social gatherings really increased a lot after Thanksgiving. And not only that, but the number of cases associated with each cluster increased by a lot as well. So not only were more people gathering for the holiday, but they were gathering with more people, which created bigger clusters and contact lists, which is probably part of the reason why the contact tracers were having trouble keeping up with the load. So whenever you're around someone from outside your household, you should always practice proper COVID precautions like masks, distance, limit your time together, improve your ventilation by opening your windows or doing it outside, keep your gatherings small. Basically, use every layer of mitigation strategy as you can whenever you choose to socialize. So the other thing that the cluster report from the DPH has come up with is, and I think in part why there's been multiple restrictions on restaurants in the last few weeks here in the state, is that as the amount of COVID in our communities increase, so does the risk of any activity where you're not wearing a mask. And those activities we enjoyed in the summer are not as safe as they used to be. And that includes sharing a meal together, such as in a restaurant. So those casual unmasked meals are turning out to be one of the more riskier activities you can do. And the number of clusters in restaurants and bars increased 30% from the beginning of November. So as more COVID was in the communities, more likely to have clusters in restaurants. And I think that's why there are more restrictions happening around restaurants. So the safest way to support our restaurants right now would be getting takeout and leaving large tips. But then there's a spectrum. So if you can sit outdoors, at least 6 feet apart, wear your mask when you're not eating or drinking. And they've reduced the capacity in restaurants to limit the number of people in them starting next week for that temporary period. So we'll see if that helps. So holiday gatherings like Christmas and New Year's will have all of the qualities that COVID thrives under. They have groups of people hanging out for long durations, unmasked, sharing a meal. Given what we saw after Thanksgiving, it's really concerning that Christmas and New Year's are coming back to back from each other, plus a week break of school where people aren't going to be in their same habits, the same socialization patterns. So people might be more likely to gather even between the holidays. So the safest option is to celebrate with just those who live in the same house with you and gather with others virtually. And if you do choose to gather with others, remember to use all of those layers of protection. So at this point, there's no time to quarantine before Christmas. So that layer is no longer available to us, but you can wear a mask for the entirety of your visit, maintain your distance, open doors and windows to improve ventilation. If you can meet outside for a gift exchange, a short gift exchange, that's even better. Shorter duration visits are safer than multi-day gatherings. And if you do gather, especially for these long holiday kind of visits where you're around members outside your household for a long period of time, it's really important to quarantine and test and check for symptoms after your gathering to help protect our community in the new year. And you can go to the state's website if you can Google the holiday gatherings en masse, and they have a whole website that details mitigation strategies like I just mentioned, and also the travel order is outlined there. So this is the expanded block of cheese because we do have vaccines starting to roll out, which is amazing to see. It's going to be a long time before the average Littleton resident gets their hand on a vaccine. And until then, the other layers of cheese remain equally or more important to help slow the spread up until the point where we can get people vaccinated. So I know a lot of people have changed the ways they're doing things, that people have added masks. They're not hanging out with friends as often. They're looking at only small gatherings, things like that. And I'm really thankful there are people who have changed their ways. And yet still, there's still more COVID circulating among our communities than there has been ever before Thanksgiving. So we need to keep using these layers of protection as much as we can. It's really important that we do everything as we can as individuals, because those collective decisions of individuals really add up to help protect our community and reduce the rate of transmission. So vaccines are on the horizon, but we just need to make it there first. And the other thing that I've been hearing as just talking to people is that there's some real worry about stigma and shaming happening. And I think it's, as we get uneasy with things, you know, right after Thanksgiving, everyone was getting notices that, you know, there's a case in the school or my friend's a case. We're hearing more and more about it. We're getting more unsettled. And then it's really easy to point fingers at each other. But honestly, that, like, we don't want to shame people, because that actually hurts our public health response, because then people are less likely to be honest, or less likely to answer the contact tracers call or be honest about who they were with. Or what they were doing. And it's less likely to seek testing if they think there's going to be a stigma attached to getting a COVID positive diagnosis. And really, COVID is sneaky and insidious, and it spreads before symptoms appear. And you can do all of those layers of cheese to lower your risk, but it doesn't eliminate the risk. Everyone can get COVID. It's just how respiratory diseases like this virus spread. So there's nothing shameful about it. It's a respiratory virus, and it's well designed to infect us, and it's doing a good job at it. So if we can do everything we can to lower the risk in the meantime, the better. The less COVID will be around, the more likely our vaccines will do their job when it's time. So changing up the mask message today, I found this made me chuckle. So Jack Frost nipping at your nose. One of the most simple things you can do is add a mask to as a layer every time you leave the house, whether you're indoors or outdoors. The mask protects you and it protects those you're with. And as a bonus, it actually keeps your nose warm when you're outside at this time of year. So I'm hoping everyone can just add a mask. If nothing else, add a mask. But remember, masks alone aren't the solution. You add a layer up. So use that distance and ventilation and all the things we've been talking about week after week.
They've been saying that scarves are not adequate. They're not the same as masks. So
yeah, that's true. Scarves are not the same. And a well-fitting mask. So actually there's some recent research coming out about multi-layer. So 2 to 3 layers is better than a single layer. Well-fitting, meaning it fits well around your nose and your cheeks. It actually covers more of your cheek and your chin, so that you're really trying to seal this area up as much as you can. I was actually, we did do a handoff to gifts to family in the driveway. And I was watching, it was actually fascinating. It was cold enough to see people's breath, even with masks on, but they didn't travel as far as it used to. It stopped 6 inches away from their face. It dissipated much quicker. It really concentrated around the person's face versus spreading the distance. So they do work. You can actually see it at this time of year, that they are shortening the distance of your spread of your breath, even when you're outside. So if you can add 6 feet to that mask, you're actually doing a good amount of mitigation right there.
Great. Thank you very much, Katrina, for that wonderful news. Anybody have any questions for Katrina or comments? No. All right. Guess we know what we have to do. People just need to do it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I think you guys have a meeting next week, but the data will probably be slow to roll out after Christmas. So
and you want a week off. So thank you.
Well, I can take a week off. I'm just not sure what I'd tell you.
I think you need a week off, isn't it? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it would be great.
And did you pretty much, you met with the, I forgot, I'm totally spaced on it, but you met with the select board on Monday and just made the similar presentation to them? Yeah,
a shorter version. They gave me 5 minutes. I think I took 25. But yeah, much more targeted to what they could help with, those layers of cheese, if you will.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Lisa, there is one hand raised for Katrina.
Okay.
And that's John.
Hey, John Curzon. Hey, yeah.
On your name and address, please.
It's John Curzon, 171 Hartwell. So, one of the things, I mentioned in the school committee meeting that we saw the same data, but, the trend of these, this virus going up, first of all, I think we need to recognize it's a respiratory virus, right? And if it's airborne, which I know there's a lot of debate about droplet versus airborne, this data suggests, and the data that you see throughout the world, it really suggests that it's airborne. And what that means is that, for periods of time, the virus will be hovering in the room even after the person's left, and they can become infected. It certainly has to be a component of the infection. And so, when we look at the data from that standpoint, to me, it's totally within norms to see coronaviruses starting to go up in the fall season during what we call the cold and flu season. I think wearing masks, social distancing, all the data seems to suggest that, it's very low effective. It really isn't preventing spread. So, when we talk about a scenario where, people are feeling shame or whatever, I really think, that must mean they don't understand, what's going on. Not wearing a mask or wearing a mask. More importantly, I think a Pew Research study that was conducted, they said 88% of the population is wearing a mask. So that's just one point. I think we're going to see the cases continue to rise a little bit more. If you guys are familiar with the Hive longitudinal study where they were looking at household influenza infections over a multi-year period, coronaviruses usually end up being about 10% to 12%, or actually I think I see a high of 16% of acute respiratory infections, and they usually peak in January. So I think you're going to continue to see it going up. But that being said, one of the main issues that I have is that there's been a lot of focus on wearing masks, social distancing, but I haven't heard hardly a peep from public health agencies on appropriate outpatient treatment strategies, strategies that actually would prevent people from showing up in the hospital, because that's what we're supposed to be going after here, right? I mean, we are instigating or instituting these policies with an effort. I believe it's a misguided effort, but an effort to try and keep people out of hospitals. Well, you know, I don't know if the board is familiar with some of the papers that have come out relative to vitamin D. It's very convincing data. The data shows that if you're under 30 nanograms per milliliter for vitamin D, those people tested positive for coronavirus at twice the people that were above sufficiency. The United Kingdom actually distributed vitamin D, I think a 4-month supply, to all nursing homes. So I don't know if that strategy has been employed. Another question I would have to the board. So let me just summarize. One question would be, do we have a public health strategy that would alert seniors about vitamin D status? That's one question. The next question that would hopefully help with preventing hospitalization. And then the next question would be on the, I'm just looking at something here. So the next question would be related to, there's some convincing data that has come out about hydroxychloroquine, not just hydroxychloroquine, but also ivermectin. And I would like to know if the public board of health has looked at that data and made some recommendations for, again, early outpatient in order to prevent people from ending up in the hospital. So vitamin D, that's one question. And then the ivermectin and the hydroxychloroquine, getting the message out to people that those things need to be used in early scenarios, early symptomatic phase. What's the Board of Health position on that and messaging around that?
Maybe Jim can answer that. I don't know if we are qualified to make any kind of preventative recommendations like that, John. But Jim, do you have a comment?
Sure. So, there's lots and lots of information. This is all very new to all of us. And so there's scientific papers being published all the time with interesting studies and conclusions. Part of the issue is that we as public health folks at a local level rely on CDC and DPH to kind of digest those things, put them in formats that we can use so that we're giving a consistent, verifiable message to the public. So I don't know that we can really comment. I mean, again, the studies sound interesting, but I'm not sure that a local public health really has the ability to make comments or recommendations in those regards. We really rely on CDC and DPH to kind of digest and provide us with peer reviews on those studies so we can provide proper messaging.
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me still, but what I find very frustrating is that I understand we're going to somewhat default to CDC or NIH, but what is very frustrating is that NIH has been very slow to adopt really any treatment. In fact, NIH did not recommend steroids until July of this year. Doctors were screaming from wherever they could that this was an inflammatory response disease, and it took until July until we got a formal recommendation from NIH after the recovery trial. So it's that type of slow moving response that's actually killing people. It's not masks. You can wear all the masks you want, you can social distance all you want. Right now, NIH says outpatient treatment, the only thing that they have right now is monoclonal antibodies. That's it. That's all they have. And you know what? You need to be in the hospital to get those. So, if the Board of Health wants to have direct impact and they want to start saving some lives, to me, we need to get people, maybe we need to get some doctors or some physicians to come in and talk about this, because, you know, it's really frustrating to be in a scenario where, oh, we want to prevent hospitalizations. We want to prevent hospitalizations. Okay, well, we have some data that, first of all, vitamin D, the chances it's very safe. You know, it's hard to overdose on that. So me personally, I agree. You know, I'm not a doctor. I can't make medical recommendations, but I feel like the literature is out there, and it's very frustrating to. By the way, there was testimony on Capitol Hill about this very topic on outpatient treatment, and it got ignored by the media. So that's why I'm hoping that you know, maybe we can start looking at these things. If I forward this to the board, this information to the Board of Health, will they take a look at it and maybe, you know, I mean, again, the UK, they made the decision as a public health policy. You can look, that's in the news. So, you know, that one, I feel like that one you could put a stamp on and let people know. But, you know, again, I'm just trying to help from the standpoint of, I understand the data, I see the data, that things are going up, and some people are still getting sick. But some of these people, I think, can be kept out of the hospital with early intervention. So anyways, that's my point. And I'm hoping that, you know, wherever we can help on this thing, we can get the message out so people don't have to suffer unnecessarily. Because I do think, you know,
Okay.
Can I just, I think there's a difference too, just to keep in mind that, like, as a public health person, you're dealing with populations of people. And with the treatments you're talking about doctors prescribing them to individual patients who have different risk benefit ratios and things to consider. So as a public health measure, like all the distancing, masks and ventilation increases, things like that, the vaccine are things that are work on a population level. So that's why I'm saying this is what I can present on.
No. I'm not knocking. I'm not knocking what your portion on this. What you know, vitamin D deficiency is a public health question. They fortify milk with vitamin D. We know if you're below a certain latitude, you know, you're not going to get any vitamin D. So it is a public health question. It really is. And, you know, I'd be more than willing to send... John,
there's something... Yeah, I'm sorry. There's something called the standard of care, which the clinical MD community, none of whom are sitting here, as far as I know, established on the basis of a careful review, actually a very thorough review of data. And many of the things you mentioned, I don't want to go through all of them, have failed the standard of care test. Okay? And I'm not saying that I hear your frustration, John. There is one, just to show you, there's another twist to this, remdesivir, which has been shown clinically to reduce the, shall we say, the severity of the disease if given early. It's very expensive, but it apparently is within the standard of care. It is being unused.
So
because patients are refusing to take it.
Let Mike speak.
I just want to make sure I still have the ability to respond back. Thank you.
Well, we might be getting off topic here too. So.
All right. Well, let me just.
Right. So if you could just conclude, please.
Yeah, I'll conclude on the remdesivir point. Unfortunately, the problem with remdesivir is it has to be provided intravenously. You can't do that in the outpatient setting, and that's one of the problems with remdesivir. So in the outpatient setting, it's IV. I see you shaking your head. But anyways, the point of the matter would be is when it comes to some of these nutritional or some of these health elements, we already have other public health agencies in the world that have recommended these things. So that's it. I mean, and I think we should take a look at those things and making sure people over 65, especially, that because I'm looking at the data, every people that are showing up in the hospital are 69 on average. So these people need to be told that, hey, look, make sure you go to your doctor and ask, but make sure your vitamin D levels are above 30 nanograms per milliliter.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, John. Okay. John Castillo and Kevin Davis are here. John, do you want to?
So I guess going to the point that the recent caller just brought up, you know, the things that he mentioned before on none of them are approved as standard of care, and the point of this board is just to provide guidance and not provide any sort of you know,
medical recommendation.
Exactly. So
right.
You know, they can, you know, he can provide the references that he wants, but the board is just here to provide public guidance. So if he wants to, you know, bring somebody on board to, you know, provide that information on his behalf, that's fine. But the board, you know, you guys have been doing a great job in that regard. But to address his point of, you know, what can be done, you know, Katrina's been doing a great job providing, you know, the information so that the public knows what's going on, but also, you know, look at ways in which we can sort of prevent this. So having a testing program and put into place, whether it be at the schools or on a sort of town-wide basis. This allows for the identification of asymptomatic positive individuals that will be able to limit the spread within the community. So that's a good way. You know, I think that's the most efficient way that you can sort of, you know, address the problem that he brought up. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
On the topic of the testing, Anthony can't be here. Anthony has been trying to get in touch with the company, and I think there's a tentative meeting for January 4th okay. about getting into the testing program.
Okay.
So.
Oh, good to hear.
And anybody else have comments on that at all? No. Kevin, did you have anything that you want to add to the conversation tonight?
The only thing that I'm still crossing my fingers for the enhanced exposure notification that we'll be able to have on our phones. Did have a conversation with a few people that I know that are involved in some of this stuff, and they are looking at the state hopefully making a decision after the new year, and we'll start to get some movement on this. The California also just turned on last week, the beginning of this week, and there's also been a couple of studies that have come out showing in Spain how when they turned this on, they actually had they could show a decrease in the number of people testing positive after a few weeks of this being turned on in areas. So this is all good news, but that's all that I've got.
Okay, well, thank you for your update. Anybody have questions or comments on the COVID-19 update at all? Just think, I'm going to speak for the board. I'm sure you guys are okay, but that we are strongly urging residents to stay home during the holidays, to limit their exposure to people outside of their household, wear masks and stay as far away from people as possible, entertain outside, and make quick visits. And if you feel sick, stay home. It's just not worth it. So anybody else want to add anything before we move on?
I'll second that.
There wasn't a motion, Kevin, but yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And we're going to move on to correspondence. Jim, we still need you on. Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. And we do have a meeting next week, but I know that you guys, it's the middle of your break. And I know you're not going on vacation, but maybe you need a break. So
I could definitely use a break, I'll be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Have a great,
all right,
great week and a half.
Yes, you too.
Thank you.
All right. So correspondence. I sent you. Anybody get anything this week besides the letter that Anthony, the email that? Well, I guess it was Diane Dickinson is who?
Board of Selectmen Administrative.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know if you guys saw the email that Janet forwarded. And Jim, I guess you have been CC'd on this also. So it seems like there's an event going on January 3rd at One Distribution Circle, where there'll be a group of people doing some kind of a vote, and 80 people are invited and expected to attend in person. So I
got the phone call from the same person who called Diane. As I mentioned, I wanted to kind of take a look at both the gathering orders to see what is, what isn't allowed. Outdoors, political, expression is First Amendment kind of thing, and so they don't limit it. Indoors, they do. It has to follow indoor guidance. So I'll take a look into it, and then we can certainly inform whoever the organizer is that it doesn't meet. It doesn't appear to meet, without going further into these things, and knowing more about it, doesn't appear to meet the gathering order. So I would not say it's allowed.
The other thing too that I was concerned about, Jim, January 3rd is a Sunday, and if this is going to happen, maybe we need to get Matt Bernard involved.
Sure. One of the things that the new gathering order talks about is that, I have to read the words just to say, I think each maybe person, how does it say? It says each person over the specified capacity limitation and each individual instances of noncompliance with the requirements of this order or directives, rules, binding guidance to this order may be treated as a separate violation. So if I read that correctly, all the people at something like that may be subject to fine. If that's how I'm reading it, I don't know. But that's the amended or the revised, not revised, temporary order on top of 57. So yes, I can talk to Matt about that too.
Well, just because, it's on a weekend, and again, for your safety, I don't want you to go and have to, but like you said, you'll talk to them first before the 3rd. So
it might be worth reaching out again once I know a location, an actual building, reach out to the building owner and let them know that they may be in violation if they allow it.
Yeah. I'm wondering.
It's a political event, right, Lisa?
It looks like a vote for somebody running.
Well, actually, yeah, there's a one of the two political parties in the state is having a contest for chairman. In other words, trying to get control of the party, and this is one of the candidates. So this is a rally of a particular political segment of a larger political party.
Yep.
Well, it's Massachusetts. It's hard to know how big they are.
Yeah. But the email says 80 members have been invited. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. You'll take care of that. All right.
Yep.
Anybody else have correspondence? Janet, do we have any comments or anything like that? We're good. All right. So we'll move on to the approval of the minutes for, as Mike corrected, for January 16th, not January, December 16th. Can I get a motion?
It's me.
Sorry?
It's not just me. The dates are all over the place.
All over the place. I got the year right. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes for December 16th, 2020?
Motion to approve for December 16th, 2020.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mike. So we'll get a roll call. Kevin Baker? Gino Fratelloni?
Yes.
Louise Nichols?
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Selden?
Mike Selden, yes.
And Lisa Flanagan, yes. All set, Janet. Member comments? No? Anything,
No.
Mike?
No, I think it's all been said.
I know.
Resistance is futile.
I know. And any public comments? Anybody raising their hand at all?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Is it just us now? Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Or actually, our next meeting will be next Wednesday, the 30th at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Right? We'll just have, right now, just Ivy Road, and then actually Katrina wants a break, so we probably won't have Katrina talk. So we do have to meet. If Ivy Road gets a chance to talk to Chris Stoddard, then we'll probably just have them and on a brief update with Jim and Scott. So the next meeting will be on the 30th, and wants to have a motion to adjourn tonight.
Motion to adjourn, and we'll see you the 30th, and a happy Merry Christmas.
Anybody else want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Roll call, we'll have Kevin Baker.
Baker, yes.
Gino Fratelloni.
Yes.
Louise Nichols.
Louise Nichols, yes.
And Mike Zeldin.
Oh, sure. Yes.